All right, bonjour and dinaway magani duke. Hapachiko migwet chipajaye gamioma. So thank you for being here. So we're gonna get to our traditional knowledge keepers leadership residential school survivor discussion panel. So in no particular order, we're just gonna go ahead with the notes that I have. So I'm just gonna introduce our speakers, our panel guests. Of course, a lady that I've known for many years. I call her Auntie. And I also refer to her as BarbaraNolan.com. One of our esteemed language teachers, does a lot of work in the community. We also have Gima Dean Sayers, descendant of traditional hereditary chieftainship. Actually, one of our two headmen in this area that signed our treaty. It was his great-great-grandfather, actually, that signed our treaty. And we have Earl Commanda. He is here and also does a lot of work with Robinson Huron Wawindamag Gawin. So good to have you here, Earl. We also have Shirley Horn, former Vice Chancellor, right? Former Chancellor. And also former Chief of Missinaba Cree First Nation. So good to have you here. And also a survivor from Shingwauk Residential School. We also have, looking at my notes here, we also have Nellie Mitchell, also a survivor from the Shingwauk Residential School. And of course, we have Mr. John Saylor, also a survivor from Shingwauk Indian Residential School. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn it over to, in this particular order, Auntie Barbara said she's going to go last. So we'll start it off with Mr. Earl Commanda.
Can you hear me? Good, good. Okay. Ani bonjour. Kenny my Anishinaabe name is Man of the Beautiful Day, so it is a beautiful day to be here. So I'm living true to my name. My clan is Dodom, and my understanding about clans, you can go by your mother's side or your father's side, and this is my mother's side. I was born, and literally born, on Kinoomaage First Nation. My grandmother was the one who delivered me, and she's probably delivered more babies than some doctors. And that's the way it was in the old days. And raised on the Serpent River First Nation. My grandfather hails from the Nipissing First Nation. And if you ever go to North Bay, you're riding on my boat there, Chief Commanda, whenever you go there. That's my yacht. I'm glad to be here today. I was asked to speak a little bit about our history, and probably because there is some significance. I work at the Robinson Huron Wawindamag Gawin, and that word from our speakers means has to do with the promises that were made between the signatories to the treaty and the British Crown. And of course, we all know that history has a lot of significance to where we are here today in Bawating. And certainly in terms of that history, there were actually two treaties that were signed here. They were negotiated with the Commissioner Robinson, and Shingwauk himself was bilingual, trilingual, could speak French, could speak English, and he understood the significance of treaty. And how did he understand the significance of treaty? He understood that significance because he was there fighting with the 600 or 800 warriors in the War of 1812. Our ancestors signed a major agreement after the Royal Proclamation of 1763 in the Treaty of Niagara. our people were down there for that signing of that significant treaty. And we take the symbolism of that wampum belt, the signing of that treaty with the Honorable William Williams at that time, and he says, "We are not less than you. We want you as allies." And of course, the significance of allies is really about what was happening at the time. It was the British trying to hang on to their territory against the French in those earlier years. And of course, the big threat was the colonies that were being formed in the United States. And so the British wanted to make sure that they were able to hang on to their territory throughout eastern Canada. And of course, that culminated in the War of 1812. And of course, it also meant that some of our people who sided came up to the British area. And for us, this is all of our area. And so you see that border that separates our people here. We didn't have that border. We don't recognize that border. But at the same time, Chief Shingwauk recognized that the treasury was being stolen from. The mines were opening up. The forest was being logged. The fish were being taken. And so he sent a petition to the Governor General, and it was in 1949 that petition reached the Governor General in Montreal, and they appointed the Commissioner Robinson to come up here and make treaty with us. Originally, they wanted one treaty for the Superior and the region, Huron region, but there was a significant difference between what our leadership wanted and so Robinson had separate meetings with the Superior chiefs. And so actually on this site here in Bawating, there was two signed and negotiated treaties. The Robinson Superior, which was on September the 7th, 1850, and then our treaty later on, 2 days later. And I understand from that history, our people had council fire. They had big council fire. They smoked the pipe. They had ceremony. And so from that gathering, I know from our history, from our own village, we had a council fire and we were asked, should we sign this treaty or should we not sign this treaty? And the decision of that council fire was yes, we would go there and sign this treaty. So without the Gomendane is from my community, who came and represented, and oftentimes the people that came were not necessarily the recognized traditional leaders. Oftentimes they were the spokesperson that were chosen to come and speak on behalf of the people. And so we recognize that role of spokesperson. And so we take that role of spokesperson, and we know that those that were here for that treaty were in fact told to represent the communities that they came from. So we signed our treaty in 2 days later, September 9th in 1850, and we just finished celebrating our treaty a couple of weeks ago in Nipissing, and of course the significant difference of that approach. Chief Stairs introduced it last year when we had the gathering over here by the rapids, was that lodge that you see behind us. A fairly significant large lodge was built, 100 feet long, 40 feet wide, to accommodate our old way of getting together with our pipes, with that water ceremony. And so I was very glad to participate in that ceremony here again this morning. And so this tradition needs to be brought back to our leadership and how we do business. And I'm glad that our chiefs are very instrumental in making sure that old way of doing business is not lost for our people. And so to that end, we recognize that for us, we had a full canoe. we had our culture, we had our language, we had our system of governance. And this is all documented for us through some of the elders that have spoken to us at our court case. We've gone through 2 phases of that court case, that annuities court case, and we've won at every one of the levels of that court case. And it speaks to the annuities clause shall be increased from time to time as the settlers reap the benefits of the resources. And it was only increased once. It was at $2, and now it's up to $4. and and you're laughing. I think in terms of where we're at, nobody likes the idea of taking the federal or provincial government to court. But that was the only way to get some recognition that there's something wrong with that relationship. And so when we take a look at our history, the British really saw treaties as a way to legalize the ceding of Indian lands to clear the way for European settlement, for mining, for railroads. The treaties were intended to extinguish all First Nations claims and rights to their land forever, except for those areas that were set aside as reserves. And if you take a look at that history, our reserves were not set aside after it was surrendered. It was set aside before. That means that every one of our 21 First Nations are on unceded Indian lands, unceded Anishinaabe lands. Treaties were expected to be the first step, of course, to assimilation. We know that as part of that, the industrial schools, the residential schools that got formulated in that process soon afterwards. So why did we agree to such a thing? We would never agree to ceding or giving away land. We would never agree. I'm told in Anishinaabe there's no such word as surrender or ceding in our language. But certainly the leadership of the day recognized that we must provide for the survival of our people and for future generations in a changing world. Times were changing back then. And so our people could see that our way of life, to hunt, to fish, to trap, to gather our medicines, was going to be difficult. And so we had to protect that. So the treaty does not grant us rights. These are inherent rights that we've always had since time immemorial. Mm-hmm. And for us, that's the significance of our motivation to protect what was always ours as our inherent right. So there is a significant difference between what the Treaty of Superior, we're promised some similarities, and certainly in terms of the Superior, they were persuaded to sign that treaty before us, and that's the area on the north shore of Superior, right up from the Pigeon River right down to Batchewana somewhere, and the chief will tell you, they have traditional territory that goes beyond Batchewana Bay. The sum of 2,000 pounds, which means that in the treaty, there was a lump sum given to each of the signatory First Nation. 2,000 pounds, what the heck is that? British pounds. That's about $3,000 today, according to the calculator. But the other thing that was there promised was a perpetual annuity of 600 pounds of money to be paid and delivered to the chiefs and their tribes at a convenient season each year, equivalent to, I don't know, about $1,000 today. I don't think you even know what that means in the significance of that. But when we talk about any settlement that may come as a result of these negotiations and this court case, the expectation is not money that comes to every individual, it also comes to the community. So there is a formula that chiefs have worked out in terms of that court case settlement. And of course, they agreed to that they would continue to occupy these lands. And if you take a look at what that occupy means, it's not the postage stamp reserves that we're on. It's all of the territory that we're a part of. So in that time, they had 17 well, they had 15 people that were actually there to sign that particular treaty. And they had two who were signed later, Shawanaga and Perry Island First Nation. They were signed as well. And certainly in terms of taking a look at the significance of that treaty, what happened after that, and it's the area around north of here, right down to southern James Bay. It's about 130,000 acres of land. I keep saying this compares to about a country the size of France. And so you see there's a large territory that we speak of when we speak about treaty. We all know things didn't happen very well at the signing of our treaty. There was language barriers. There was legalese that were used in that. And often the interpretation was done by second-hand translators. And for us, we don't speak in terms of legalese. We speak in terms of metaphorical speaking. As long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the water flows. And it was explained to me that when we talk about that water flowing, what we're really referencing is life. It's women who give life to us, and it's women who breaks the water when a child is born. And so I see the significance of our connection to our mothers when we speak of this relationship. As long as the water flows, as long as the grass grows, as long as the sun shines. And so we take a look at that event, the significance of the treaty. The actual wording from the treaty suggests that we freely and voluntarily surrender, cede, grant, and convey unto Her Majesty, her heirs and successors forever, all their rights, title, and interest in the whole of that territory. We believed, our chiefs believed, our ancestors believed, that the land was still theirs. Based on our inherent right to protect Mother Earth, and so we still own all the resources, all the grasses, all the minerals, all the fish, all the game, all the animals. So that was what we wanted to make sure was protected, that way of life in that treaty. We wanted to make sure that there was land that we can continue to gather as tribes. But we also wanted compensation for the loss of use of that land and the annual annuity. And it would it spoke to the idea of sharing the benefits of the resources. It didn't say we give up who we are as governing people. It didn't say that we will stop hunting in certain places or fishing or trapping. And so significantly, we pushed, and it was Shingwauk himself who pushed for 10 pounds per person. He pushed for larger reserve. He wanted to even try to secure a grant of 100 acres for the half-breed. And so you can see from this, there is a significant consideration for why we wanted to enter treaty. And so to that end, the chiefs, yes, they've come together to push the government to increase the annuities. But the chiefs also did something significantly otherwise. They wanted to make sure that an organization was created to continue to protect those inherent rights. And so out of their wisdom, they pushed for some funding to create the Wawinamagewin, the Secretariat. And I'm quite pleased to be working for that organization. And one of the things that we significantly took as a first challenge was what are impacting us now? We know it's mining, we know it's forestry, we know, but we also know that there are other treaties being looked at again. And to the south of us, the province signed a renewed treaty allocation with the Williams Treaty. That takes almost a half of our treaty territory. And so there was no consultation with us when that happened. We have a modern treaty being negotiated with the Algonquins along the Ottawa Valley, again, overlapping into some of our treaty territory. We know we have the Temagami people up there who claim they never signed the treaty, although they went to the court and said they are considered an adhesion to our treaty as well. And we know we have all of these differences here in terms of our neighbors to the north, to the west. And so we want to enter into a protocol relationship and settle these differences amongst ourselves without government. And that's the way we feel it needs to be settled, amongst ourselves. And so to that end, we certainly look at our history and the rights that were there, and we look at this new approach on working these things out. And we've sat down with some of these other leaders in the past. We've sat down with the Mohawk people that live in our territory, Wata First Nation. We sat down with Saugeen and Nawash First Nation that fish in our waters as well. And we sat down with the Algonquins as well to say we need to settle these differences in terms of overlapping territory. And so to that end, we also know there's a looming question about the Métis in our territory. We're looking at that as a separate issue, but certainly something that impacts treaty rights. It impacts our inherent rights. For some reason, the province gave the Métis the right to hunt all over the territory without any granting of permission in our territory. So you can see from this history, there's a lot of current work that needs to be done. But what I just shared with you is, more importantly, is that this history needs to be known by everybody. And I reached out to Diane and I said, wouldn't it be great if we could teach teachers how to teach this history in our schools? And I think this is a relationship that we'd like to strike with Shingwauk Kinoomaage Gamig, is to take a look at that history and begin to teach our young people, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, about that true history that we have as Anishinaabe people in this part of Turtle Island. And we've started that work now with one of the tribal councils within our territory at North Shore. And we've taken that work and we're turning it over to curriculum developers to see if we can develop that curriculum for the elementary, for the secondary, for the post-secondary students. And so I would really like to sort of move that to the level where we get those people that are going to be teaching this, taught this history in the right way. So I want to thank you for that opportunity to speak with you this morning. And I'll turn it over back to Joel.
Miigwech, Earl. You know, Earl really hit on some important points, and my question for all of our guests, and I don't say this in a confrontational way, saying this in a humble way. How many of our folks in our area know our treaty history? Truly know our treaty history? And to further extend that, how many of our people know our treaty song? The song that goes with our treaty. And why that's important, because out in Muskochis, in Treaty 6 territory, every day when they open their schools, with their schools opening exercises, before they play the national anthem, they sing their treaty song. And that's the type of work that Earl's talking about, the work that he's committed to, the work that we see as a result of our survivors who are here today, why this work is so important. So we say Miigwech, Earl, and we're going to turn things over. We'll go over to Mr. John Saylor at this time.
Wache, bojo, tagana mi kweb dish na cause makwa onyamo. I'm glad to be here to share with you my thoughts on a lot of things. This morning I was in Diane's office and there was a little boy crying. And it reminded me when I first came here, not knowing why I'm here. was I'm supposed to get an education. Education didn't work out for me. My education is back home on the land. That's where my education is. I may not speak the language fluently, but spirits do talk to me. They share with me. This is what belongs to you. The land, the air, the fire, the water. That's what belongs to you. There is no treaty when we own this. That's just all made up through education. Education, to me now, is a little different to my own understanding. Even though I don't have it, I share that with young people, children, because I'm working with young people today, up north, all small ones, young teenagers. And I tell them how important education is. And I listen to people that have that education. I wish I had it, but I didn't. I fought against it because the things that happened to me here in this school for 11 years. I came here at the age of 4, not knowing nothing. But I learned quick how that system was going to change me, to make me into something that I'm not. But I found myself a few years ago. And when I found myself, I re-educated myself. Because I was hurt. That pain will always be there to teach me. There are better ways of handling things. There are better ways of doing things. I listen to people that are educated. I'm learning from you. I see it, I hear it, and I feel it. I'm just one man who's walked this road by himself. But I look at it today, of all the people that were in my life, whether they were good or bad, they were showing me something. Showing me how to live. I wanted so much to give up, throw my bundle away, but I can't. Spirits keep egging me on, keep going, don't stop. You're working for the people. You're nobody special. An old man came into my life, and he had a hard time explaining a lot of things. But I understand what he was trying to share with people, about the government, about the church, and about the Anishinaabe people. I understand what he was trying to tell people. The church controls things. The government controls things. And they're controlling us. We're not free. I was free one time when I was living in the bush at a very young age. Nothing out there could hurt me. Nothing. Everything out there teaches you. That's my school, my education. I was born with it. I wasn't baptized. I curse, I swear just like everybody else, but it's not mine. In our language, we don't do things like that. That's what I struggle with. Because they're trying to make me into something that I'm not. I'm not white. I'm a Anishinaabe. Was born with it. My mom was Ojibwe. My dad was Cree. My grandmother was Ojibwe. And my grandfather was Cree. I'm OG Cree. That's who I am. I'm proud of who I am. I stand up for my people. I do things for my people. I pray hard. That's all I can do. People come sit with me. I listen to them. And I said, if I were you, I know what I would do. That's how simple life is. I know what I would do if I were you. But people don't. Because they're so afraid. I had a lot of help after I turned my life around 30 years ago. I turned my life around for the betterment of myself. I didn't think I could get up to 73. Never even thought about it. I don't even feel 73. I'm still the young boy that grew up on the land. I'm still young as the day I was born. I'm as old as the Creator. And a lot of people say, how old is he or she? He's only as old as today. And that's the way I am. I'm only as old as today. I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, but I know what my past brought. Brought me a lot of hardships. Brought me a lot of learning. And like I say, good people help me, bad people help me. Now I see that school over there. It's changed. A lot of people worked with that. Shirley Horn and everybody on the Shingwauk alumni. I was their firekeeper. I never called myself an elder. I don't label myself. I'm just a helper. I'll help anybody to find their way. And I only follow one way, Creator's way. That's who I follow. He showed me a lot. He gave me a lot. So this is the life I live today. People say I'm a loner. I'm not. When I drive down here, my thoughts are with the Creator. My thoughts are with the spirits. My thoughts are with the land, the water, the air, the sun. That's where my thoughts are always with. Because I'm never alone. That's where I find my strength. I talk to them. It's like I'm talking to you. They understand. They see it, they hear it, they feel it. I'm not a medicine man. I'm not a miracle worker. I just tell people the truth. Because when they sit down with me, all I share with them is, I'll be honest with you and I'll be truthful with you. But you have to do that for me. Tell me everything what's going on in your life. Because life is so simple. I made it hard on myself. I took ownership to it, to all the mistakes that I went through. I took ownership to it. And I gave it back to the Creator. I let Him take care of it. Sometimes I wish I wouldn't call Him. Because I see the Creator in women. Beautiful women. They helped me. They truly helped me. They've been my teachers. Because when I came to this school at the age of 4, and I watched my mom walk away, it hurts this today. That's why I saw that child crying. It brings me back there, and I feel hurt. Because I could never tell her I love you. I could never tell that to my mother. Pain is what I go through every day, knowing that I will never see her in this world again. But I know I will see her in the spirit world. I don't know when, and I don't know how. But I just have to live. A long time to walk this journey. I'm still walking. I have polio. And polio didn't beat me. A lot of the other students laughed at me, made fun of me, but I had to fight back. And I fought back because they had no right to do what they did. Some of them abused me. Same with the principal at that school, abused me. But I also became the abuser myself. Because that's what they taught us. Shh, keep quiet. Don't say nothing. That's not right. Nobody should go through that. You should never put anybody through that. That's the truth about their life. Be honest with people. Speak the truth with people. And when I work with young people up north, I share with them, I will never hurt you the way I've been hurt, because I am speaking the truth. Love your children. Find that love. Be with them. I don't blame my mom, because I found out my mom went to residential school. My father went to residential school. I'm the last of it, and I'm not going to let kids go back like that at the residential school. You as people can stop it. I hear people talking this morning. We all work together. We all help each other. We'll get through this. I hope someday to share that, what the old man was sharing about the church, the government, and our people. Because I understand what he was talking about. Because he drew it on a diagram. And I share that with people that need to know, especially government, especially church. We all believed in one thing one time. We all believed in the Creator. But the government and the church separated and began creating their own God. That's where I went wrong. They control us as a people. But we can break free from it. We could use their law against them. We could use the church against them. That's what I believe in. Stop the lies. Quit telling lies. Be who you are. Help your people. Help them change. I've changed. I'm not the person I used to be. I enjoy coming to gatherings like this. That's where I get my healing. By watching people, listening to people. Everybody has something out there to offer. Share that. Pass it on. So I'm going to leave it at that. Let other people speak, because I want to learn too. Oh, miigwech.
Miigwech, John. You know, as John was sharing some very important teachings with all of us, I come to think of that word, akiwenzi. And we translate that in our language. The translation is old man, but it doesn't mean old man. Ake, meaning earth. Wenzi derives from that verb wenji. So it literally means one who is of the earth, one who comes from the earth, one who understands our life ways. You know, and John talked about the importance of our education as an Anishinaabe and all of our knowledge systems that come from the land, all of the things that are out there in our natural world, all of the wonderful gifts we were given as Anishinaabe people. And our smartest people in our communities don't carry PhDs. They are people who are connected to our land. So we say miigwech to you, John. Thank you for sharing those powerful, powerful words and those beautiful teachings. I'm going to go on over to Gima Sayers and ask him to share a bit.
Miigwech Joel. Bojo Kinoomaage. Bojo Mishom Sananak and Nakoma Sananak. Bojo Miigwech Kishem Nado. Aki. Thank you, John. Really got me thinking about our villages and our people and the challenge that we've had. And I put my hat on just because I need some help. This panel is traditional knowledge keepers, leadership, residential school survivors discussion panel. And I feel out of place up here. I'm too young to be with all of this snow on the roof, all this knowledge that's at this table today. And I'm not going to take too much time because I really want to hear them. These feathers on this hat and these feathers that I carry with this fan have made their way to me to help me in the work that I do. And each one of them is a spirit that has offered to guide me and advise me and inform me and help me share the words that I need to share on behalf of our ancestors, on behalf of the current leadership, on behalf of our people. And I really take it seriously when I wear my hat. So I need that help today because it's really pulling at my heartstrings this occasion. I want to thank those 215 children that really brought to light the issues that we're dealing with today as a society. And it wasn't an accident that they allowed themselves to be discovered just recently. They allowed themselves to be discovered so we could do what we're doing today, and we could take seriously the work that needs to take place as we move forward, fulfilling the original hopes and expectations that we've all had, especially as the original peoples of these lands. And I say that intentionally, that I refer to us as the original peoples of these lands. We weren't lowered to Africa and came across on a boat. We weren't lowered in Asia and came across on a boat. We weren't lowered in London, England, and came across on a boat. This is where we were lowered. This is where we came. And this is where we promised to look after this part of our mother, the earth. When we came here, it came with a pretty in-depth set of instructions. And those instructions were kept alive for a long time. As long as the sturgeon's been here, that's what my dad says. He did. He passed away a few years ago, but he would have been 100 this year. But he talked about the sturgeon, Neme. And he said, we as Anishinaabe were lowered here the same time as the sturgeon. And he said, the sturgeon is a blessed fish. He said, you know, a church, you know how you say church in Ojibwe? Neme Gamig. It's a blessed house. Neme Gegon is a blessed fish, and the Neme is blessed just like us. That's why we call them the blessed. He said, when we were put here in Baoting, when we were put here in this area, we had a job of looking after the land, looking after the trees, looking after the moose. We had a job of taking care of all of the plants, all the animals. And just like us, our relative, the sturgeon, had the same responsibility in Lake Superior, in Lake Huron, in the Great Lakes. He was placed here at the same time, and he's blessed, and he has the same responsibilities, but to look after those under the lake, keeping it clean for all of creation, Kinoomaage, for everything around us. In that sturgeon, he says, that sturgeon thinks holistically, just like us. He thinks about everything having an effect. And in the sturgeon's, in his head, there's 4 different kinds of meat, and there's 4 different sections in his head. And he's a very powerful being that was placed here the same time as us. So he said, I want you to name your next grandson. Neme. So Neme is running around here today somewhere. And so these teachings of our relationship with the environment are in our school, right over there. That's our school. That's our lodge. And we're surrounded by this memory. We're surrounded by this connection with creation. And when we need to know something in that school, we have ceremony, we have spirit. And when we forget something, we'll ask creation to send those messages through our shake tents, through our pipes, through our knowledge keepers, through our sweat lodges, and those answers will come to us. That's our school. It's how we live. And even there's a medicine man in the area that makes medicines for us, and Dan Pine Sr. And he was telling me not long ago that he knows a lot of medicines and how to make different things, but he was saying, when I don't know something and I'm trying to help somebody, he said, I just trust the spirit, and I take tobacco and I go into the bush, and the spirits will tell me what I need to collect, and I won't even know, and they'll just take me to the medicines that I need, and I'll harvest them and I'll make a medicine and it'll work. That's the spirit. That's what's missing in our school, in mainstream education. The original vision that I understand through living away from the city and growing up in the bush, growing up with really elderly parents. Like when I was growing up, my parents were almost 50 years old when they had me. And all my friends had parents in their 20s. I had a different experience. There was like this, listening to elders all the time and listening to their stories about, they didn't even know they were traditional. My dad said, I'm not traditional. But he would tell us all these beautiful gems that I use now to help our people remember who we are. And his dad was the chief in the village too. And he remembered all these through the crane things that we share. But what he talked about a lot was how this is our school all around us. And we tried to capture that here within Shingwauk Kinoomaage Gamig. And thank you to Eddie Benton-Benet and Shirley Roach and all the elders that have passed on. Some of them are still here. But what you see is the semblance of our culture embedded into the architecture here. If you go into the library, it's a teaching lodge. We're surrounded by all of creation in there, and it helps enrich the educational experience for our people at this really beautiful new university in Ontario, one of 9 new Indigenous post-secondary institutions. And it wasn't easy to get here. The vision that originally took place was that, what I understand was, we had this teaching lodge. We knew these boats were coming here, and we needed to understand their boats, but they needed to understand us. So we wanted to have an experience in our education system of who they were and how to work with them. But it wasn't what it ended up looking like. The vision of Shingwauk and the other leaders wasn't to have the extinguishment of our teaching lodge. It was to complement that. So we have a better reflection of that today here. The experiment across the road with the residential school system, that education system, wasn't the vision of what we expected. This is closer to the vision, this new university, which will fulfill our historic leadership's expectations, including Chief Shingwauk. So we are at a good place today, and I'm looking forward to continuing to move forward education from an Indigenous lens that's reflective of a holistic worldview that will be able to share with not only the new people on our lands, but even our own people, to get a better sense of who we are and incorporate that into the work that we do as we look after the earth. I was one last thing I want to share with you. I just came from the Great Lakes Public Forum in Niagara Falls, where people from all over around the Great Lakes gathered to talk about the quality of the Great Lakes, and they were talking about invasive species. And I got up to the mic and said, "How come salmon and smelts are not listed as invasive species in the Great Lakes?" Because salmon, when they were introduced, decimated the lake trout fishery in Lake Superior. Salmon are carnivores. They eat other fish, so they pretty well ate a lot of the whitefish and the trout, the babies, the fingerlings. We made it through that, and then you introduce smelts, and smelts are so acidic that they were eating the bellies of the trout from the inside, and they almost wiped out our trout population. And when I go to these invasive species seminars and I see all these like lampreys there, Asian carpets there, I said, "Where's salmon and where's the smelt?" So I asked this panel that, and they said, "Well, it's not always invasive species that you may perceive as being problematic. It's the stakeholders that we consult with, and we ask tourism operators, or we ask education industrialists, and so all the stakeholders have an input on what is declared as a problematic invasive species." I said, "That's why we're in the problem we are in regards to the quality of the Great Lakes. We are not embracing indigenous cultural knowledge and protecting the species that need to be protected. You can't use corporate and economic knowledge to trump indigenous knowledge systems and our education systems and our worldviews. We have the answers, and I've always had the answers in how to look after these lands. And we're in a good place now. It's legal for us to get education since post-1951. I'm talking higher education. It's legal for us to hire a lawyer now. It's legal for us to go to town. It's legal for us to have more than one doctor. My parents are so frustrated with that. They said, my parents were born in the 1920s, but they'd sooner just have medicine in the bush or in the village, because if they go to town, everybody from Garden River, Batchewana, same doctor. They're all the same doctor, and when they, same pill, same white pill, no matter what was wrong with you, everybody get the same white pill. So we're in a better place. So miigwech, and I'm looking forward to listen to some gems from these elders here beside me. And thank you for coming, and thank you for your resiliency and being able to talk and help us better understand where we came from and how we can move forward better as a people. Miigwech, 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 miigwech.
Miigwech Kima Sayers. You know, one of the things that I had the pleasure of learning from the late Murray Sayers was one of our places in this area, a place called Grocap. Traditional name for that, actually, learned that from Dean's father. That place is called Nebkosing, talking about the cliff where the water doesn't go. And, you know, in that knowledge that Chief shared with us, talking about the salmon, talking about the smelt, you know, we know those are invasive species because, one, we don't have any words for those in Ojibwe. And two, we don't have any Odzukanak that talk about the salmon or the smelts. None of our sacred stories. So miigwech for sharing. At this time, it's my honor to introduce our next speaker, survivor of the Shingwauk Indian Residential School, Miss Nellie Mitchell.
I was taken from my mother at the age of 2. By the CAS, placed in foster home that didn't know where. At the age of 4, I was sent to Shingwauk School. I arrived by train from Sudbury with another student, Ernie. All I can remember is sitting in a big black car and on the train. Getting off the train. I had no idea where we came from and where we got into the car. Once I arrived at the school, I was introduced to my 2 sisters, Doris and Evelyn, and my 2 brothers, Rainey and Alfred. They had been here, they had been taken from our home many years sooner, many years. They had no idea who I was. My first supervisor was Miss Reeks. She was a good person. I was very sad when she left the school to marry one of the supervisors, Mr. Ford. I did have some difficult times at the school. I remember once having to scrub the boiler room floor and halfway down the hall with a nail brush, a little nail brush, as a punishment for saying the F word. I was 8 at the time. The only reason I said it was because I had heard other students saying it. Once my mouth was washed out with Sunlight soap, I never said the word again. I was told I did not have parents and that I had to stay at the school all year. I was so sad when I saw the other students leaving on the buses and returning to their families. Once the students all left, we were told that we were to clean the playroom, wash the bathrooms, the shower, the sinks, and all the walls. Once that was done, then they would take us down here for a picnic. I celebrated many of my birthdays here, because that was in August. One summer I was allowed to go with Miss Reeks to her summer home in Quebec. She took me to meet her family. It was a good summer. I had a wonderful time, got lost on a big ship. My next supervisor was Miss Woods. She was okay at the beginning, but later she was mean. She took me on vacation with her to Utterson. I had a good time, but she was very strict. I was not allowed to tell anyone about things that she did to me. But once her mother came, it would all stop. I was glad to see her mother come. Most of my time at the school was fine, but some wasn't very nice. Like the one time one of the students attacked me with a rat tail comb, stabbed me in the back. I was taken to the hospital because they had to remove the comb because it had broke off in my back. She was also the person who assaulted me in the shower room, told me that if I said anything, I would be sorry. I was very afraid of her. She was much older than me. I never used the showers after that, but at least I took a bath. I could lock the door. I later heard from other students that she had assaulted other students and threatened them also. Once my family member left the school, I was very lonely. My brother Rainey was sent to Sulakaut Pelican School. There he died a few months later. He was 13 years old. They found him hanging in a barn. My sister Evelyn left. I asked them where she went, and they would not tell me. She did come back to see me, but was told not to come back. We were to go to the show. I was very upset that she never came back. I never saw her until 1968, when I went to Montreal with my sister Doris. And that was only for a couple of minutes because she was on her way to work. I finally got to see her in 1970 when her and her friend Harry came to Cartier to visit. My sister Doris did work at the school for a while. Then she left to go and work for people in the Sioux. That was where I found out that you have to put water in potatoes to cook them. She just told me to turn on the pot at 4 o'clock. I burnt the potato and the pot. My brother Alfred also left. I saw him coming up the driveway and was going to meet him when Mr. Phillips told me to go back to the school. He met my brother and made him turn around and leave. I ran down the driveway on the other side of the school, waited till Mr. Phillips was back in the school, waited till he came. I yelled at my brother. He came, and I asked him where he went. And he told me he had gone home. I asked him how come he had parents and I did not. And he told me, you have parents. I was told that I had no parents, and that was why I had to stay at the school. That was the beginning of my runaway days. I was 10 at the time. The first trip got me to the outskirts of the Sioux. I learned that no one from Garden River carries a suitcase when they come to town. The nice police officer brought us back to the school, left us off at the end of the driveway. So we knew we weren't going to get caught that time. My next trip was to Massey. One of the girls there lived there, but she never told us that her brother was a police officer. So we got caught that time. We were strapped this time in front of everyone in the dining room and put in the infirmary. The only really bad thing that I can recall was that Miss Woods forced boiled whitefish into my mouth after I had thrown it up. She made me sit in the middle of the dining room floor with my plate all night. I fell asleep, and when I fell asleep and was woken up by the kitchen staff, and they had removed the fish from the plate. So Miss Woods came down in the morning. She thought I had eaten it. After that, whenever they served fish, I would go and hide in the cubbyhole under the steps. The kitchen staff knew that I was there and would come and knock on the door and leave a little sandwich for me. The last and final time I ran from the school, I went to Amos, Quebec. The school, I thought that I could get there and would be fine, and would find my sisters who lived in Montreal. But once I was on the road, I became frightened and called the Indian agent to see if they could send me home. The school refused to take me back, but I was okay with that. I would finally meet my parents. I first met them when I was 10. 10 years old. The school finally let me go home for Christmas vacation. It was not a happy experience. The drinking, the fighting got me scared, and my grandparents looked after me. I had my brother Alfred there too. He sent me back to the school after Christmas. All things were not so bad once I realized that I was not alone and that I had a family. I never finished school. I was in grade 7 when I ran the last time. I learned to respect people. I did get my grade 12 equivalency once I returned to Chapleau, years later, after I was married. I lost my mother at the age of 22, my dad 10 years later. I lost my sister Doris at the age of 50, suicide. My brother Alfred succumbed to cancer in the end, but he was a heavy drug user. My youngest brother, Calvin, died at the age of 50 from alcohol. I met him when I was 13 years old. I didn't know anything about him. He was taken when he was 2 months old. I blame the government for all our family problems. If they hadn't taken Evelyn, Doris, Alfred, Rainey all at once, maybe my parents wouldn't have turned to alcohol to ease their pain of losing their children. Then I came along and I was I was removed from the home as well as my younger brother. They said my parents were unfit. I would like to find my brother Rainey's resting place. I've asked my eldest son, Greg, if he could come with me, and he said he was willing to come. So that's going to happen next year, I hope. I was born in Tophet. I sent here at 4, left at 14. I got married at 17. I was married for 55 years. I have 3 children, 2 boys, a girl, Greg, Billy, and Doris. I now live in Spring Bay. My daughter Doris is a family doctor in Mindamoya. My son Bill is a computer tech for the mines. And my son Greg is a pilot and a heavy equipment operator. Recently, I lost my husband on July 21st of this year. As far as the school itself, when I do finally think about it, it was a good place sometimes. But I keep coming back to the Sioux because to me, that's the only home I ever knew. And when I do finally come to rest, I want my ashes spread in the cemetery at the back. Some of them, not all of them. My family knows this. And I would like to introduce my grandson, Noah. He's been with me through my heartbreaking times right now. He's been with me for almost, 6 weeks now? But I couldn't do this without them. We're helping each other. And my daughter, she's going in for a big operation, but we're going to get through it okay. She wanted me to be here today because she knows how important it is for everyone to know what happened in this school. And as far as this building, I love it. I just love it. I wish I could, if I wasn't so old, I'd come back to school. Because I don't even know my language. I never knew my language because we were never allowed to speak our language here. If we did speak our language, those who were fortunate to be able to speak the language, they were reprimanded. Which I tried to learn the language, but I just wasn't. I couldn't get my tongue around those words. But maybe someday, if I last that long. I'm only 70. How old are we, Johnny? We're the same age. But I love this man. We went through hell in here, but we're survivors. Thank you.
Miigwech Nelly. Powerful, powerful words being shared here with all of our survivors. And again, folks, one thing to keep in mind as we move forward through the day that all of this is a result, the hard work, the perseverance, the resiliency, the strength of our survivors. Government policy may say this is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, but this is a result of survivors. So we say miigwech to all of our survivors. At this time, it's my privilege and honor to introduce our next speaker, former Chief of Batchewana First Nation, Councillor Harvey Bell.
Oh, bonjour. The chief has asked me to relay a message because people are sharing some very sensitive portions or parts of their life, and that there is a sacred fire here. If you wish to put some sema down, that's for you as well, or anyone that it affects, because we know that a lot of people have been affected by the residential schools. Recently, my daughter and my granddaughter went to Saint Anne de Beaupré in Quebec to see the Pope Francis. And there were four of us. Serene Fox is another cousin of ours. And while we were there, my granddaughter and Serene made a banner, and it said, "Rescind the doctrine." I'm sure some of you may have seen it on your computer or your cell phone. It made front page news in Quebec. What they were referring to is the doctrine of discovery. Doctrine of discovery happened or occurred in the 1400s or 1500s, and the papal bulls was part of that document as well. And what it did back then, the Pope of the day and the Catholic Church gave permission to the people that were coming from Europe to take the land, and they did. They took all of the land. And as far as I know, the doctrine is still in existence. And the conquering countries of the day, England and Spain, and they went all over the world with this doctrine, and told peoples that it was okay to take the land from our people. And we had people here. There was millions of us here at that time and before. So Pope Francis didn't make any reference to the doctrine, but he knows about it. And we hope someday that they will rescind or take back that doctrine of discovery. Because it wasn't good news for us that our ancestors that were here, and for us today too. They placed us on these little reservations around the country, and while we were kept like almost like prisoners on these little reservations, the Europeans came and took the valuable things from the land, the oil, the fish, the wildlife, the diamonds, the timber, all of those things. And they still continue today. They still continue to take that. I had an opportunity as well to, when they transferred the records from the Toronto office, it was Toronto or Ottawa, of the residential schools, and they transferred them to Winnipeg. And I helped out a good friend of mine, Fred Kelly. He's an elder from Treaty 3 area. Fred Kelly lives or resides in Winnipeg, so he was there to receive those documents, those records. I did a 4-day fire on the Michigan side of the border, the Chippewas, the Kuwaitan, the ones that own all the casinos, at their cultural center, their cultural building. And together we worked together to make that transfer. Fred also shared with me Carlisle Residential School in Pennsylvania. And that was the model that Canada used in Canada when they started placing residential schools in the country. They took it from that model of Carlisle in Pennsylvania. There's been a lot of tragic tales and stories, and I'm sure we're not going to hear all of them. And we're not going to hear everybody's story because we know that people will take this to their grave, their experience in residential school. And that's the way, that's their option. They don't wish to talk or share their story. Recently, I've been asked as well to sit on a panel or a group for those by the Chiefs of Ontario, for those unmarked graves in the country. And there's lots of them. They're still undiscovered. We know that they're all over the country. So I agreed to do that and try and help out as best I can. I'm not a survivor of the schools, of the residential school. I was at the end. And people ask my age, I tell them I've been 76 trips around the sun. So, but my aunts and my uncles, they went to a residential school. They had that experience. And one of my aunts, a family of 13, she's the only survivor now, the only one that's still living, Aunt Mary. and she went to the Spanish residential school. We were fortunate that she's able to share her story. I know they did a documentary about her, and it's probably on the internet somewhere about her story and survival of Spanish residential school. So I'm still involved with our council today. I sit on part of the council, being part of the council. So I'd like to dedicate my time to these kinds of events. Every child matters, and that is true. Every child. And it didn't only happen in Canada, it happened in the US as well, all over the US. Residential schools. Carlisle is only one that I mentioned. But there's a lot of untold stories that we'll not hear. But we got to try and help whatever way we can. So with that, I'll say, Chimigwech, 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 Chimigwech.
Miigwech Harvey, Miigwech Bijayan and Nungom. At this time, I want to take this opportunity to introduce, and very humbled to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Shirley Horn, former chief of Missinabie Cree First Nation, also a survivor of the Shingwauk Indian Residential School, and also the former chancellor of Algoma University. You know, in spite of the history of what we know took place across the street, Shirley also played a very important role in establishing those relationships and partnerships and all of the things that we see happening here today. So we say miigwech to Shirley for being here.
Ashkipadaban, Ashkreo, and Disnakos. Is this working? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Thank you for those kind words, Joel. And I really, really appreciate the stories that were being told here today. Some of it I've known about, and some of it it's all new to me. And I welcome that information because every time I learn something new, it helps me move forward, and I can use it as an instrument of the building of relationships. And Johnny and Nellie, I remember them when they came to the school. They were just little guys. I'm 10 years older than them. And I remember the pain of this little girl here because I witnessed it. Lots of the things that were done in front of the other students to embarrass us. I know I went through a few of those situations as well. And Johnny, I remember Johnny very, very well. I said, who's that tiny boy coming in here? What is he doing here? You know? So because I was a child myself of 7 when I came here, I had those questions as well. So as a result of being here at such a young age, we were deprived of our language, of our traditions, of our homes, of the love of our families, of the love of our communities, where we were the losers, but so were our parents and our grandparents, because when you take children from a community, what do they do to be a grandmother when all the children are gone? What do they do to be a parent when all the children are gone? And it's important that, for me anyway, that I feel that within my heart every day, because it's one of the things that I'm involved with now, is trying to do that restoration to our first of all, our tell the story that is in our archives, that is fully photographed. I invite you to come there and to look at those binders that are full of stories and pictures of all of the children that went through the work. And that's very, very important, the work that I'm doing today. And one of the things is strengthening our relationship with this organization as well, because we're all trying to do the same thing. So if we can embrace each other's dream, embrace each other's work, because what we're doing is we're actually working people here, and we're not prepared to stop. A sister of mine who went to the residential school, Susie Jones, I think you remember her. She was working with us as part of the children of Shingwauk, and she went home. She wasn't feeling good. Her son took her back to her hotel, and she had passed away within an hour. And she knew that that was going to happen. And she said, they're going to take me out of here. Well, it didn't quite take her out, but very, very close. And I think that kind of life, dedication that we hold, Nellie and Johnny and other people that have attended residential school, our circle is getting very small now, very small. So if we're in a hurry to talk about what we need to talk about, please forgive us. It's important that we embrace all of the organization and the people who are working towards bringing the stories forward. I just came from Stratford. Two Nish women wrote a play about Shakespeare and the residential school. Now you got to go and see that play. As a matter of fact, we're going to try to bring it here to Sault Ste. Marie to show everyone what this play is all about. And they invited me down to Stratford because it was picked up by Stratford as a play that was worthy of being in the Stratford Festival, and I'm so proud of those ladies. And I worked with them for 5 years off and on to help them guide them through what residential school was like and the different things that happened. And it's such an incredible piece of work. But there are people, artists, and other organizations, people who are getting involved in land-based activities, teaching about the culture that is out there, because it is so important. That is our school, or was a part of our school. We have to bring that back to ourselves as a gift in terms of learning about the old ways, learning about not necessarily how to chop wood, but it's the thoughts that you have while you're doing that. So it's very spiritual work that is happening here as well. And we have to use all of the resources that we have at hand. Truth and reconciliation, that's this important journey that's happening. But you know what? We're still at truth. In honesty, we're still at truth. So in regards to all of that journey that we're undertaking, we're all undertaking the same journey because we want to do it for ourselves, for the generations that have passed into the spirit world that didn't have the opportunity to address their pain and their sorrows and what they missed about their life being an Aboriginal person, their families and communities. These are all everything that we have to think of when we sit around these tables, the language in which Barb will be talking about. So many of our people lost the language and are doing the best that they can in order to learn the language again. Some of us are older students, and it's very hard to learn a new language when your old language had been taken away from you. So, and learning about those treaties that Mr. Commanda talked about, that's part of our history. And at some point in time, we need to have that fully available for people to read about and learn about. It's very, very, we're involved in such important work within Shingwauk Kinoomaage Gamig, from the children of Shingwauk, from the Shingwauk Hall across the way. So it's important that we embrace each other and we do the best that we can to talk about the work that we have to do for our people today and for future generations. I really, really appreciate every opportunity that I get to talk about my time at residential school and what my dreams are in the future. Not necessarily for me. And as far as that chancellorship goes, I didn't accept that position for glory or anything like that. I accepted it because it allowed me into the boardrooms of Algoma University and to bring forward what our needs were as a former residential school, but the education of our people in the future. And I'm so glad that I was selected to do that. I thank the Creator for that gift that was given to me. And I hope that I'm making the very best use of the gift, of that particular gift. I embrace this Shingwauk Kinoomaage Gamig because we share the same name. We're children of Shingwauk. And that's not to say we're biologically children of Shingwauk, but we're spiritual children of Shingwauk. And we value the stories and look towards who he was and the great and incredible journey that he was on to make this all happen today. This is part of his vision. And I always am pleased that I am part of that vision as well. And the pool of influence is starting to spread. Like the pebble that's thrown into the pool, the more we talk about it, the more we bring it to the public, the more we speak about it in a good way for ourselves and our people, the greater that circle will grow. And it is the vision. It is the vision of Shingwauk. It didn't stop at just the school. He was talking about his people who were the Anishinaabe of this area. But I came and as a Cree person was part of that vision as well. My spirit as a child is there as well. And so is Nellie's, and so is Johnny's. So we add that energy to what our spirit was, which is so, so important, and we can't forget. And I share that information and that journey with my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. I have 5 of them, great-grandchildren. I'm so fortunate. And I'm so fortunate to wake up every day and have somebody call me or message me on the phone and said, Shirley, can you come and help us with this? Can you come and speak to us about residential school and so on? And I always agree, yes, I will be there, because that's my journey. And that will always be my journey, to spread that information. Because if people don't have that information, they can't take activities towards healing, towards making a better place for all of us. We love the land. We love the language, even though some of us don't have it, but others will carry that. And I really appreciate the spirit and love that is generated from the people who are working so hard with Shingwauk Kinoomaage Gamig. I really value that. And it does my heart good, because I want to be part of that journey until I leave this earth. And I believe I will. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Shirley. You know, really powerful, powerful words here shared by our panel. And one of the things that it brings to mind is that as Indigenous people, whether we are Mushkegowuk, whether we are Nehiak, whether we are Anishinaabe, whether we are Haudenosaunee, Ongwe, Owe, Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, Lenape, all of our different tribal peoples across Turtle Island, a common belief that we have and a common value and principle is that the best thing we can do is to work towards the betterment of our community. And I've heard somebody say that we are the answer to our ancestors' prayers. We are the answer to our ancestors' prayers. You know, and this next speaker, I have the esteemed privilege, and I call her my auntie. You know, and of course, our elders are super humble. We never want to talk about ourselves as Anishinaabe people. But it's one of the proudest moments that I've ever had in my life before my grandma passed away, was to sit at her kitchen table and to be able to speak Anishinaabe Moin with my grandma. And this next speaker, back in the 70s, we didn't even have a curriculum here in Ontario. We didn't have native language programs. And this woman took the French curriculum and adopted that curriculum. And one of the first Ojibwe language programs that we ever had in Canada happened right here in Bawating. And that's because of the work of this woman right here. You know, and we know the effects of residential school, but we are on the precipice of producing more second language speakers today than we ever have in any time in history. There's a school out of Hayward, Wisconsin called Waidukwadating Ojibwe Immersion School. And here's some staggering statistics for you. For the last 23 years, the kids at Waidukwadating write a standardized test in grade 6. They have a 100% pass rate, and consistently, year after year, they outperform kids in the mainstream. And that's because of the work of survivors like Barbara, survivors like Nellie, survivors like John, and of course, survivors like Shirley. So, at this time, I want to introduce my auntie. I call her BarbaraNolan.com.
Gananibu. Shingwauk Joel. Gananibu geni Nanigitonia. Because I want to see who's in the back. Miigwech, John, Nellie, Shirley, Harvey, Chief Sayers, Minothish, Chief Commander, or previous Chief Commander. Miigwech for all the sharing that you did. And each and every one of you, from the bottom of my heart, Chimiigwech Dinninim. Let me talk a little bit about John. When I was working at Sault College as a counselor, and we started incorporating Anishinaabe things there, you know, some of our ways. So we used to get John to be our firekeeper because he knew a lot about firekeeping and things like that. So we treasured John. And he used to live here in the Sioux, but after that he moved on back to other communities, and I think finally he went back to his own community. Miigwech for all the service that you did with the kids there, the students at Sault College, John. And the other one I remember, Maba. Who was Agnes to you?
Auntie.
Your auntie.
Auntie Mary.
Auntie?
Auntie Mary.
Mary? Mary Agnes? She was Agnes Bell.
No, that's my grandmother.
Oh, your grandma. Okay. When I started working here in Bokting as a counselor with the students, the Anishinaabe students that came to school from Garden River and Batchewanaband, I had the opportunity to do home visits, okay? Whether it was a bad visit, like your children are not coming to school regularly, or if it's good messages like, oh man, your little boy is just excelling really good in his grade this year. Or whatever reason, I used to visit the parents. When I very first started, I visited Agnes Bell, that is his grandma. And she was a fluent speaker. But like she was old at that time, and I was young. Like I might have been 24, 25 years old when I first started. And I was fluent, having come from Manitoulin Island, having lived for the first 5 years with language. We did not hear English at all. So I was fluent up until 5 years old, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later, but I want to go back to Agnes here. Agnes was fluent in her language, and when I would go and visit her and we would speak in the language, even though it's a little bit different dialect, but we understood each other. And she had this little cardboard box underneath her bed, and she kept her apples and cookies, and she would invite me, like I'd knock on the door and I'd hear, Bindigan! And then I would walk in and hear Agnes, Bindigan! She was hard to get up and get around at that time. So Agnes then, she would offer me a cookie or an apple or something. She always kept that little box, that little cardboard box full of little goodies under her bed. And I said, Agnes, how come you didn't put those in the fridge or your cupboard over there? And she says, my son, I forget which one it was, but anyway, she says, my son brings all his friends over here and they eat it all, so I don't want them to eat it all, so I keep some, she says. So she would put that in under her bed. So those are the good memories I have of Agnes Bell from Batchewana. I was born and raised on Manitoulin Island in a little suburb of Wiki. It's called South Bay. I don't say wiki because we weren't in wiki. Like Wikwemikong is the whole reserve, and it has these little sub-communities. And the very last one is South Bay, way back in the bush over there. So I consider myself a bush Indian. Although I don't know some of the things we learned when we were young, like skinning the fish or filleting it or all those things, or eating the fish head soup and eating the eyeballs. I don't think I do that today. But that's how we were raised, on rabbit and partridge and deer. There was no moose on Manitoulin Island. So those are some of the foods we had. We didn't eat bear because we don't eat bear, I don't think, as Anishinaabe people. It's sacred. And beaver, well, we did have beaver, and I think the beaver tail, it stings like crazy. When you cook it, But apparently it tastes very good. It's a delicacy. So I don't know if any of you have ever tried beaver tails. Not the beaver tails they sell up here or down that way, Those are cookies or cakes, pastries. Anyway, when we were 5 years old, my sister Rosella and I, Rosella was 7 years old, and she was kept back 2 years so that Barbara could reach 7, or 5, could reach 5, and then they would take us to school. We were all happy. We didn't know where we were going, but we were going to school. That's all we knew. We had a little bag, a little pack, and our parents just put a little something in there for us. And we were taken to school. And we had a truck. We were one of the few people that had a truck back in South Bay over there. And my dad, he was in tourism back then, and he made these rowboats, and he would take tourists out to go fishing. If he was as a guide, they would pay him $5. Without the guide, it was $3 a day. And we got to eat the leftovers when the tourists would leave. Bananas, we never saw bananas before. Oranges and apples, and we didn't even know what they were called, except the apples. We didn't know what those strange fruits were called. Grapes, we later learned on what they were called. Anyway, I jumped off my story. Where was I? I think I'm older than a couple of these young ones over there. 5 years old, yeah. We were really happy that we were being taken to school. And it was a long ride, because the ride from Wikwemikong, and you pass Manitowoc, you pass Little Current, and then the ride was like this, They straightened that road a few years ago, and it cut out like 3 hours, I think. Yeah, you would be driving along like that, and you come around this way, because you got to go over those hills. Nellie, the ones I'm talking about, right? By Fox Lake and all those places. Yeah, when you come to Espanola. Anyway, so we finally got there to that school in Spanish. And those of you who travel, you could go maybe 2.5 hours, and you'll come to Massey, and there's a flashing light there. You turn right there, and it'll take you. And the only remains of that school is the skeleton of the school that I went to. It burnt down, and just the bricks are left standing up. You can see where the windows were and where the doors were. So we were really happy, little girls. And that's the way we were raised, to be happy, and, when you're a kid and you're running along and you're just a happy-go-lucky little kid. And that's what I was. I think I still am, now that I'm older, And I surpassed that. 4 years we spent in Spanish, 4 years. But we went home at Christmas time, and we went home in the summertime. So we didn't lose total connection from our families, from our community members. So we didn't lose that total connection. Anyway, when we got there, I want to share just a little bit of some of the pain that we experienced there. When we first got there, so we were going up the stairs, and our parents helped us up the stairs, and then we got into this doorway, and it was the parlor. And it was just beautiful. The walls, and there's a big thing hanging out over here. It's hanging from the ceiling. I guess that was the chandelier, I later learned. That's what it's called. You know, and it's just full of glass and whatever else it's full of. And the walls were just nice, and there was nice pictures on the wall, and there was that cross. But we knew what that cross was anyway, because we used to be taken to church a lot in South Bay. There was a little church over there. And so we were busy looking. And these two nuns came in. And we knew they came in, but we didn't pay any attention to them. And then we're still looking, you know, at the floor, and oh my God, it's just marble or something. You know, floors at home were made out of boards about that wide. And when you scrub them, you have to not scrub in one area too long, otherwise it would be cleaner than another area, you know. And then you had to twist that cloth and put it in the cracks so you get the dirt out of the cracks. Those are the kind of floors we had. But we didn't have these nice floors that were in that building there or in that room. Anyway, we were looking around, and then we turned to look, and where's Mom? Where's Dad? You know, in our language, we didn't know English. We started bawling like babies. Well, we were babies. And we started to cry, me and Rosella. Mama, Papa, Pishan, you know, right away. That's the very first time, that we experienced being strapped by a leather belt leather about that long, thick. She grabbed our little hands and strapped us. We didn't know why, because we were crying, or because we were speaking a language that she could not understand. Then we were taken into another little room, and we were stripped of our clothes and given a shower or a bath or whatever. And then they cut our hair. I used to have long hair. They cut it really short. Bangs. And then they took us into another room where we got our shoes and the socks. And there was, much like the orange shirt story, okay, her mother got her a nice orange shirt to go to school with the first day of school, right? If any of you have read her little book, her book about the orange shirt. Well, there was these smocks all piled up, you know, on the shelf. I wanted that one over there. And it was a plaid smock. I wanted that smock. Pwede ganyan yan. That's what I said, hey? Right away, I was spun around with grabbed me by my hand and strapped, because I said that in the language. That is what I want. I was not given that smock, that plaid smock. I wanted that plaid smock because my brother had exactly the same kind of plaid shirt that was up there that I wanted. I think if I had got it, it would have given me some form of comfort, you know, that I have my brother's plaid shirt on. So those are some of the things I remember, you know. And if I was at your school in Shingwauk over here, we would have fixed those teachers that really treated you bad, Nellie. Because when I forget what grade I was in, maybe grade 3, okay? So we knew English by then, you know, and it's so awful that they did Like I learned a second language by I'm a subtractive bilingualism. That's what they call that. There's additive, you treat them nice for their first language, and you add a second language. The other one is a subtractive bilingualism. You try and subtract the child's first language and give them a second language. So, anyway, I'm going to tell a story because you're going to laugh. And like I said, I was a happy little lucky little girl. And like John said, he is still that little boy, hey, when you're growing up. So I'm still that little girl, I think. Becca. So, one thing I wanted to say was, I said to Joel, and I know sometimes I can talk for long. Like teachers asked me to go and make a presentation in school, and my class is 2 hours. Oh, no problem. You know, I can talk beyond 2 hours. You know, and well, with a break here and there. But anyway, so I told Joel, I says, can I speak last? Because I'm thinking if I speak first and I take this whole long time, the rest of my peers here will have a little bit time to talk because then we'll be at the end. But I think it played a trick on me, right? Now, if they were really gung-ho on keeping on time, Barbara would only have 2 minutes to talk. Anyway, we had an awful teacher too, just like you had awful teachers over here. Punish, 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 right? They always punish you. Well, this one teacher's name, and we remember her name, is Miss O'Driscoll. And she was just terrible. Like she was terrible in her ways to us, okay? She always punished us. And I forget what subject she taught. But there was like little desks. We were all in little desks, and her desk was in the front. And I'm going to go to the front because I want to. And because I can. Okay? I can walk. Anyway, so this Miss O'Driscoll, I'm a storyteller, by the way, if you haven't noticed. But anyway, Miss O'Driscoll always came into the classroom. Okay, so you're in the classroom, right? Okay, and there's a hall here. And she would come, and she had this gray, they were sisters of the gray nuns, I think, or gray sisters, anyway, whatever. They were gray. Anyway, so she had this belt, okay? And then on her belt was these beads, the rosary beads. And they would jingle jangle, okay? So we can always hear her. And then she had these high, you ever see those little old lady slipper or shoes? They were like a big, thick heel on them. So you can hear her clicking down the hallway. Well, this one day she was late. And we're all sitting there, and we're all talking in our language because teacher's not there yet, right? So here we're all talking, and this one girl says, I'm going to teach her a lesson she won't soon forget. So we're all wondering, what is she going to do? I remember that girl's name. Her name was Crystal. So Crystal, she was a tall girl, taller than, Crystal's right there. No, she was a tall girl. And so Crystal went to her desk. Her desk was up here. So Crystal went to her desk, and she dug in the drawers, and that's where Miss O'Driscoll kept her thumbtacks. But they weren't the little wee puny little thumbtacks we have today. They were big, okay? So she took a handful of those thumbtacks, and she got the teacher's chair right here, and she put them on there. Like she didn't lay them down, but she stuck them up, okay? Because that was her habit. Miss O'Driscoll's habit was to come into the classroom and plunk herself down. That's what she did every time she would come in to teach us. But anyway, so she comes in, and she plops herself on the chair, and she flew up to the ceiling. We all started to laugh. You know, just like you're laughing right now. Hey, you could just picture her. Anyway, oh my God, she looked like a bull, a raging bull. Imagine puff coming out of her nose, out of her ears. You know, she was mad. She was just red, you know. And she would say, "Who did that? Who put those tacks on my seat?" You know, and nobody said nothing. We all know who did it. We didn't see nothing. We didn't hear nothing. We didn't know nothing. Okay? That's what we played. Anyway, so she couldn't get the answer. She asked. Then we were made to kneel in front. So a long row here. We're all kneeled down. So she would go to this end over here. She'd walk over there, and then she'd ask that student, "Did you put the tacks on my seat?" No. "Do you know who put those tacks on my seat?" No. And then she'd take out the strap, and she'd strap that girl like 3 times, maybe 4 times. You know, nobody said nothing. All the way down, even Crystal. The teacher went all the way down, and we did not tell on Crystal. We all stuck together. We all took the pain because that teacher deserved the lesson. Eh? Anyway, I wanted to tell that story to put a little bit of humor in it. I mean, we all took the strapping for Crystal. I remember that. But what I really wanted to talk about was, now you can tell me, go like this if I'm supposed to go like that. I wanted to talk about 4 words and 4 words, so that's 8 words, right? But just imagine, like I had wanted to have a board that I can write on so you could see what I'm talking about. Just envision a big medicine wheel over here, okay? So we're going to flip the medicine wheel and put the east over here because that's where the east is, right from here, okay? Things happen in the eastern direction. Things happen in the southern direction. Things happen in the western direction, and things happen in the northern direction. The first words I want to share is from the eastern direction, there's birth. When we are born, we come from spirit world, we come into this earth world when we are at birth. Okay, we are born, and we carry along, and the first gift that we receive is sight. Okay, we don't see when we're first born. You don't see till after a couple of years. Okay, I mean, a couple of weeks, you know. So maybe 2 weeks, your eyes start to focus. So that's the first word, birth, okay? Birth, youth. Then you reach the age of reason. And the next one that you receive, the next gift is movement. So, you know, you're moving around, you're crawling, okay, over here in the eastern direction, okay, you're a baby, you start to move and all that. So movement is the next gift that you have. You're always moving somewhere. You're going over there to visit. You're going over there to play. Okay, so movement is the next word. The next word is relationships. So that's in the western direction. And you form these relationships as you get older, right? So you'll form those relationships. Whether it's after high school, in college, university, wherever you're in a place of employment, you form relationships. It can also refer to anything that you do, okay? When you're in this stage of relationships. You're building relationships. And then the last one in the northern direction is passing. Okay, from building your relationships, you pick up things, you pick up skills, okay? And then in passing, when you're elder, okay, or you're reaching that young elder, middle elder, elder, you want to pass on your knowledge, much like Shirley over here. She wants to give. So she's passing on before she passes on into the spirit world. And I think we're all there as elders here. We're trying to give back to the community, to whomever will listen to us. We're trying to give back. So that's the passing. Whatever skill, you might be a young person. You might have learned a new skill. And you might have teach something. Maybe you knew how to make lacrosse sticks. So you're going to learn how to make, you're not going to save that just for yourself, that skill. You're going to teach other people, okay? And then you're going to pass that knowledge on to others. Okay, so those are the first 4 words that I wanted to talk about. The next 4 words, okay, look to the east over there at birth and when you're a young person. The word I wanted to share next is hurt. Hurt. When we experience hurt, like we experienced hurt at residential school, okay, that did something to our spirit. It hurt us. Everybody is born with a flame. Okay, when we are born, you're born with a flame. That's your spirit, your soul. Okay, and that it's like that fire over there. And if this bee doesn't get out of the way, he's going to get a good slap. But anyway, it's like that flame. Your flame should be burning nice like that flame. Okay, you. When something happens to you, like being scolded really hard, that flame goes down. Goes down. It doesn't go out. It's our own responsibility to make that flame. You got to stoke that fire, right? Like your stove at home. If the flame is going down, you're going to go stoke that fire and we'll put another wood in there, okay? Because you want to keep it, you want the house to be nice and warm all night. Okay, so that's the same as within us. We all have a flame within us. And it's our responsibility to keep that flame burning. So that's what we want to do. So when I'm down like that, maybe something happened that my flame is kind of burning low. I have to find out what would make Barbara feel better. Okay? A visit to somebody? Go shopping? What's going to make me feel better? So maybe I want to go and get my hair done. Or maybe my nails or something. Whatever makes you feel better, that's what you have to do. Because you are responsible. Nobody else is responsible for that. Harvey can come say, Barbara, I'm going to make you feel better. Maybe he might, I don't know. No. I'm just kidding. You gotta laugh, right? Anyway, nobody's responsible. That's not his responsibility. I probably say no. Anyway, so all kidding put aside, that we are responsible to make ourselves feel better. So that's hurt, okay? We were all hurt. We all sought help. We all sought help because we knew we were hurting. Sometimes you don't know you're hurting because we have something in here that is very powerful, and that is the subconscious. We don't know we're hurting. half the time until something triggers it. Then you hurt, hey? Oh, what am I going to do? Well, I need help, you know. I just uncovered something. I remembered something that happened in residential school. Who am I going to go see? You know, so we sought out help. We sought out counseling. We sought out things in our culture, a sweat lodge, our elders. We go visit, okay? However, we found that we needed to fix that hurt. That's what we did. The next one is healing. And I don't think you ever reach the end of healing, because that hurt, it will always be a memory. You can let it overcome you, but that's your choice, right? You have a choice. You can let it overcome you and dwell in your hurt and pain. Oh, poor little Barb. You know, she's just so hurting from her experiences in residential school and going round and round and round. But hey, somebody might tell me, you don't have to go that way, Barb. You can go the other way. Hey, like you can go round and round this post here, and then until somebody comes and taps you on the shoulder and say, Barb, you can go that way. You might feel better. So that's what happens then when we take responsibility for our own healing. And look at these young elders here. You know, they're well into their healing journey. And I think John said that. He remembers sometimes. And he knows what to do to look after John. And that's awesome that you do that, John. Chimigwech. The next thing that's on this wheel, this imaginary wheel, to the west is forgiveness. We have to forgive our past. We have to forgive Miss O'Driscoll for being so mean. She probably didn't know any better. Maybe that's how she was told to teach. We don't know. But we have to forgive her. So we have to forgive things that happened in our past and lay it to rest. Forgiveness. And the final thing then is reconciliation. We have to reconcile, okay? We can have the strength to go to Shingwauk University, Shingwauk Kinoomaage Gamig, or Shingwauk University over there, to where you went to school, to where you have all those memories. I can go to Spanish and look at this skeleton of structure where I attended school and go there without too much pain. I can go there and be okay with it. That's reconciliation. Those of you who were not raised in the language, and I always could kick myself in the you-know-where, I didn't speak my language to my kids. It was kind of hard because my husband did not speak the language, although his mother spoke the language, but he didn't speak the language. And I spoke the language. The only language I used with my children would be, Namatapin, Wisnin, Wewiptan, Apishkwikwan, you know, all those little commands that you do with little kids. That's what I do with the daycare now. You know, all those little commands. Emkwan nakasan wisnid. You know, that's all you do with those kids. And that's all I did with my kids. Until one day, my daughter, I have one daughter, and she happens to be sitting right here in front of me. And she's at the table, her and my oldest boy, my son. And they're sitting there, and they're just picking at their food. So Colleen wants to tell on her brother. And she goes, Mom, Chris, ain't we snicking here? She put Wiesne and put a king at the end. Wiesne king, eating. Eh? She knew how to do that. Code switching. That's called code switching. We do that as speakers. We do that a lot. Airport nipis. Okay, I'm going to drive to the airport. Airporting. See, it's very easy to do, and we're not supposed to do that. So that's what she said, and I thought, oh my God, what am I doing to my kids? She's going to start writing like that at school. You know, she won't pass her English. You know, and I think that's when I stopped speaking to my kids in the language. Now they want to learn. If they want to learn, they come to me or gather all resources that they need. I could go on, but I think I better save it for another day. The other thing I wanted to tell you was I had an opportunity to talk to the past president, or maybe two past presidents at Algoma University. And I told him, you know what, you could get yourself on the map. And so the guy says, oh, how so, Barb? I says, you could put a program on here that will create speakers. Kids lost their language here. Put a program on, and I can tell you how. I'll give you all the know-hows. I know how to create a speaker. You do that, and you'll put yourself on the map, and you'll make people very happy. You create speakers, adult speakers. It never materialized. I mean, they say, oh yeah, I understand, blah, 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 you know. And then the next president, I also got on after that one, you know. And so wherever there's language talked about, I'm there. I like to contribute, like I did with the students. The students didn't want to take French. They had 1 out of 10, 3 out of 20. Those were their marks in school, in grade school. They didn't want to take French. So since then, I've worked with language. I taught the first language course here at Algoma. It was a non-credit course. And then it jumped over to Sault College, and then all of a sudden I'm really busy, and I had to hire other speakers, Mabel, and another one from Sagamok. You know, I had to get them to help me. We need speakers. If our language is going to survive, we need speakers. I went up north to train speakers on how to deliver in the way to make people understand what they are saying in the language. Comprehensible input. That's what you need. Any speaker, that's what they need to know how to do. If you go to barbaranolan.com, you won't understand the words, okay, that go on. This is not a joke, it's real. You go on there, you can get it on your phone, and you can watch a little video on there. Some of them are 15 minutes, some of them are 12, some of them are 20. So if you have time, go on there and watch those stories. You will not know the words, and that's okay because you haven't had language at all. You know, so you can go and watch, and as long as you get the gist of the story, you are getting that language into your language acquisition device that everybody has. If it's your second language, then you have another cup. There's 2 cups. Okay, one is full of the language that you speak. The other one is the language that you want to speak. Okay, the other cup. So that language goes in there. Okay, so watch those little videos there. Some of them are funny, some of them are okay, some of them are, you know. So, but look and watch what's happening in those videos. I know elders like to watch them because they make them laugh in some of those videos, and they just crack up, eh? And most of them understand the language that is spoken in there. So I think I'm going to be, I know I did speak with Diane, and Diane's mom was Shirley Roach. And Shirley Roach was a big ally of mine. And she was always adamant. You have to understand first before you can speak, you know, and she'd go and teach what I taught in second language acquisition over in Bay Mills, you know. But she was the backbone of our little group, of our language group that we had. Yeah, and she knew and she believed that speakers can be created, adult speakers. Little people can too. So I'll end it with that. I may have my work cut out, but I'm willing to help as much as I can. Anybody, you can text me, you can find me on Facebook. Well, how do you say this? And I have found that I can send a recording that records my voice in there, and then now you can hear it instead of trying to read it. Thank you. And I stood back here and stood up because the sun is shining, right? And it's warming my butt and it's warming my ankles. That's the real reason I stood up over here. Miigwech, miigwech.
Want to see miigwech to Barbara again. And the stuff that Barbara speaks about, she's been talking about this as long as I can remember. Her methodologies, her pedagogy, a true pioneer in teaching the language. And what we see in terms of producing second language speakers with our young people, that school I spoke of earlier, Waiduk Wadaring, that's all in immersion. And that's in the methodologies that Barbara speaks to. Barbara should have a PhD multiple times over in language. And again, our most knowledgeable people. We're so grateful to have all of you here. So once again, Shingwauk Kinoomaage Gamig, Miigwech Bajaye Gamioma Shingwauk Kinoomaage Gamig. So thank you for being here today. Let's have a round of applause for our panel, folks. And at this time, you don't have to stand and remove your hats. That's not customary. But if you want to make your exit as we are singing this traveling song, you are welcome to do so. And with that, I say, Apachigo Miigwech and Bizendawiyeg, Miego Ma Manik and Weiwei Tuyen. My name is Joel Surret. Thank you all for listening.